Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate your time. This is going to be the first of hopefully a couple of these Glensound seminars. The products are fairly comprehensive, so we're going to do a bit of an overview today and we'll cover off a little bit of everything, and then we may dig down into some more of the commentary systems and some of the more discrete systems in some other sessions as well. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them. This is a pretty informal session. Got a couple little systems here set up that we're going to run through and configure up and show you how that all looks, and try to give you a top to bottom view of Glensound. So Glensound is a company that is purely audio related. They've been around for quite some time. They make a number of capture devices, loudspeakers, all of it primarily based around Dante, which is a nice addition, and the fact that it plays nicely with a lot of other products on the market today. They started back in the 70s, and their claim to fame originally was doing commentary systems, old analog style of commentary systems over in the UK. They have, we know it more than ever, they have the largest range of commentary units. I've got one unit on the desk here with me, but there's, as you say, there's over 50 of them now available. So lots of different sizes and shapes and form factors and things like that. So they're a UK-based manufacturer. All the devices are handmade. They're founded in 1966. Based around BBC work that they were doing, and I did the first telephone balancing unit for BBC's phone-in program. In the late 2000s, they switched and kind of adopted the Dante mentality, and have been doing it for a number of years now. And we started representing them here in Canada last May. I guess it's been a year ago exactly. So it's been a nice addition to our product line. They make a number of nice little throwdown boxes and interfaces, and they kind of bridge the gap between some of our Digico and some of our ClearCom products, and have found some nice homes out there in Canada. So yeah, as I said, that almost every one of these devices, if not all of them, have some form of Dante built into them. Either they're using the Broadway chip or the Brooklyn chip, or some variation of those two. One of the nice things is, Dante obviously provides us with a very stable and a healthy audio network over IP. We obviously support gigabit switching technology within these units. And the nice part too is, we all deal with AOIP or IP protocols that require special requirements for switches and things like that. And, Dante does have its requirements, but it's probably one of the most interoperable ones that will work on almost any switch out there. There are limits, of course, and we can certainly talk about that, but it's fairly interoperable with just about anything. And of course, the nice thing too is it's firmware upgradable too. Dante and Automate have done a good job in making firmware updates available, and the process for downloading and updating devices, almost bone dead simple. So guys make a number of different things that we're going to look at today. We're going to kind of break these products into their different categories, and have a look at anything from our Dante loudspeaker here. We've got little Divine into some of the audio interfaces, get into some intercom stuff and some IFB receivers, and then at the end we're going to cover off the talent and commentary systems. So the first one, and I think my favorite, is the Divine. So the Divine is essentially a PoE powered little loudspeaker. It's actually quite small. You can see it here in this shot. It's not much bigger than my hand here. So it's the pictures make it look a little bit larger than it actually is. But this is a brilliant way to add in a speaker to an intercom system or an existing paging system or anything like that, and we'll find out why here in a second. So obviously it's PoE powered, so we just need a single connection to the unit. That's it. Cat5 or Cat6 is more than fine. we actually can facilitate 4 audio inputs. So that allows us to take in different signals from different areas or have priority as well too, which we're going to have a look at. We can obviously make adjustments on the front panel. There's a little selector button and a volume control, which is really handy. And we basically used up all of the possible PoE power that we can get from a standard switch. So it functionally can't be any louder, given the requirements that we have. So you'll notice on the back it's pretty straightforward. Just the Cat5 connection in. There is a built-in menu that you can cycle through on the back side of it. And if you have a look at the bottom section here, there is a couple of stand mounts as well. So there's 2 threads for mic stands that you can use to put that up onto different mounts. So one of the most unique features about this guy is the fact that you can set a priority override. So you can set one input to be a constant, and then you can tag another one as an override input. And what that will do is, say you had a program source of audio, you could have that be kind of riding along in the background, and you could have a stage announce or some kind of thing as the kind of emergency page or something like that, and that can override the program audio. So it would duck that level, and we can choose how that input and that output works. We also have some EQ profiles for music and voice, and low frequency cut, gain boost options, obviously locking all the options, and of course we can turn all the LEDs off and make it completely dark essentially, which is really handy. So as a quick example, what this might look like, we might have a standard intercom system, an analog input, which we're using one of our boxes that we'll talk about in a minute. We're going to convert that to Dante and feed that to, say, a backstage left paging speaker. We could do something like a front of house, coat room audio monitor, same thing on the stage right. But in this case, we've fed program audio, which goes to these speakers on channel 1 continuously. And then we've wired in the stage announce from the intercom system. And this becomes our override channel. So we're overriding the program with the stage announce. So when the stage announce is active, it ducks the program audio feed so that the announcement is made properly. So that's a quick example. There's a couple of other places that the Divine won't show up in this presentation, but that's a quick example of what can be done with it. I have a question, Pete. Can you grab my power supply for this laptop? This other one. Sorry about that. Check your mic check. Yep. Sure. Sorry, guys. You guys hear me okay now? Is that any better?
We hear you, Geoff.
You good? Perfect. So the next thing we're going to have a quick look at is some of the Dante analog interfaces. And we have a couple of different series of those, depending on the size and the quantity and things like that. So we'll have a quick look at that. The AOIP series is a box that's been quite common for us so far. They're basically little throwdown boxes, and those units give us a variety of different options. The most common being the 22 unit, which is 2 analog in and 2 out. We also have an AES version of that, and then we have variations of an analog in, an AOIP4, and an input and an output box that way. So these are just quick and easy throwdown boxes that are PoE powered to give you just a bridge in or out of a Dante network. We've used these boxes with some of our loudspeakers with analog or AES inputs, just to do a bridge between Dante and analog or Dante and AES at the endpoint. So these effectively get tagged on the back of the speaker. a Cat5 line goes to it. It's powered by the line, and generates us an analog or an AES signal out for a self-powered speaker. So kind of a neat way to modernize or change something that's existing. So the two most common one, the AOIP22, basically give us just 2 channels of analog in and out line level on XLR. Obviously, it's PoE powered with a RJ45. We can do anywhere from 44.1 to 96K with this interface, that's kind of a nice option. We have the ability to flip it into its AES67 mode, so it does support both traditional Dante, but also the AES67 variant that Dante supports. We also have rubber feet and some cable tie mounts, so there's a couple of spots on the top of the boxes to tie them down. And obviously, PoE powered is the essential option, and we also do have a 12-volt inlet jack here as well, so that can be powered remotely if PoE isn't available. So there's a 2-in 2-out AES version, transformer balanced version of that. So a single XLR with 2 channels on each. Same kind of idea, sample rate converter on the input, which is kind of nice, so you can bridge 2 different worlds together if you need to. And of course, being AES, we support anywhere from 32 to 192 kilohertz. And we do provide an AES3 signal purely and locked right to the Dante clock itself. I'm not going to go through all the details on every one of these boxes. They're all very much the same, just different input and output characteristics as they are. So that was a 4-input. This is a 4-output box on the same format. We have a 4-in and out AES box in the same size, same kind of idea as the 22 we just looked at. This one's kind of a neat box. It's a 4-in, 4-out analog box, all built into the same unit. So obviously it's rack mountable in this case, and gives us a bit bigger form factor. And it's PoE, and again, it does have a built-in power supply for proper plug-in directly. Now, for more demanding applications and higher channel counts, we do have a series that we call the dark version, and these units are basically 8, 16, and up, but also offer some unique variants that come in the form of mic pre's as opposed to just line inputs, and the ability to remote control those as a result. So one of the most common ones is the Dark 88, which is a single rack unit, 8-in, 8-output unit. You'll notice the big difference with these guys is that we're using a different Dante chipset, the Brooklyn 2 card in this design. And the big difference with that is that it gives us a primary and secondary network, as well as, you'll notice SFP connections here, so we can do direct fiber to the unit. So we can do Ethernet or fiber in these cases. So in addition to dual power supplies and some additional other features, we do have that secondary connectivity. One of the other versions is kind of an AES and analog input box. This one's kind of unique because it has a combination of both, obviously, 4 AES pairs and 8 analog inputs, but it allows you to do auto switching between the pairs. So we can set a priority between different input selections across the unit. So if one fails, it will automatically, move along to the next possible unit. So same idea, dual power supplies, and the Brooklyn card to the additional networking capability there. This guy is a smaller form factor, but built in the same platform with the redundancy. But this basically gives us 8 mic inputs to Dante in this case. So the additional phantom power, gain control, all capable in this half rack space unit. So obviously we can pick between mic with phantom and line level inputs. And for these applications where we do require some additional control, Glensound has a piece of software called Glen Controller that we're going to have a look at in a minute that allows us to adjust the gain and these 48-volt phantom options and with the other parameters.
Is that got 1/4-inch inputs as well? I can't tell on my monitor?
No, this is just XLR based.
Just XLR, okay.
One of the other variations is this 8-input version, so rack mountable as well, but just a straight 8 mic inputs. So the same options on XLR and controlled by the Glensound control. So this is kind of a quick view of what one of the units looks like in the software. This is just a snippet. There's obviously multiple panes for these units, but we do get dynamic metering. We get the ability to adjust the what type of input it is, whether it's dynamic, phantom powered mic, or line, and then the gain control as well too. Moving up to some of the larger ones, there's the Dark 16 variant, which is basically 16 in, 16 out, analog and AES options. So these guys are the same format, but flipped over to DB25s. So we use breakout cables with these guys to get the density and still the same 1RU platform with the redundancy. And again, this particular one supports both analog and AES, so we have the auto switching between the input selection. This guy is very much the same. So I'm not going to cover every single one because, as I said, they're very much just slightly different variations on the input count and basically what you see in the controller software. Another variation here, just 16 analog in and 16 outputs. This is just a 16 input box by itself, and then the corresponding output unit. And then a quick look at what the actual software looks like when we see multiple devices. So we have a 16 in and out mic, just an in and output box, and one of the 8-channel mic per units at the bottom there. So one of the other more comprehensive pieces of equipment that has proved to be very useful is the Bella audio monitor. We found this to be quite handy in applications where you've got quite a few Dante channels flowing around on a network, and you need an intelligent way to monitor those and to switch between them and just verify that the audio that's on them is the correct audio and that it's clean, not glitchy, any clock issues or anything like that. So Glensound makes a series of Bella units in different channel counts, and this particular unit is the most common one, the 22. And this gives us the ability to look at basically 20 different sources from the audio network. We can bring in 2 local sources on the back. You'll notice there's 2 local inputs here on the end, 2 XLR, and we have, as you can see, 10 level controls here on the front to adjust the relative levels of all of those inputs, and 2 built-in speakers, obviously, to listen between. And obviously, we can switch between groups of inputs as well to cover off a larger channel count. And they've added some unique features like a couple of analog outputs to feed to maybe a set of other monitor speakers or another location. We also have an AES output as well too. And then we have some output routing switches so you can make some configuration changes using those. And then in addition to monitoring and setting relative levels, there is a solo button up top here that lets you pick any one of these particular units to hear that channel over top of everybody else, just like a mixing console. So the next thing we're going to have a quick look at is some of the Dante intercom and mixing options. The Glensound Dante intercom side of the product line is something they call the Beatrice intercom, and every one of these has a unique name from for historical reasons, and it's quite fun to see them all in play. But they all kind of play nicely together as a system goes together. But using some of the stuff we looked at, like the speaker itself, and some different stations and different configurations, we can make a fairly simple but also a very comprehensive intercom system. So they obviously have bell packs and desktop rack mount options, right up to 16 channels discretely in one unit. So a lot of them have local I/O for integration to bring in local audio sources at a headset location or something else, as well as obviously the link to the Dante network for bringing in much larger channelizes. We also have built in, which we'll talk about a little bit later on this particular point, the ability to do mixing and intercom mixing in some of the larger units. So, when you get to having 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 units, feeding them appropriate audio, mixing the audio together so that people are getting a combination of multiple people, that's one of the things that we can do a number of different ways. So we're going to cover that separately. We also have a unique built-in party line mode. So in its basic form, we can just tie a couple of devices together and just make it work as it is with nothing else required. And a lot of this stuff, like any of the Glensound, is pre-configured, kind of out of the box, ready to go. So you don't really, there is software to control and to do things, but you don't really have to get into it to make any key changes, or at least have audio pass between units. As well, Glensound's patented a special input circuitry selection that they call their referee input compressor. So basically, it's a compressor and a hard limiter on the mic pre, just so that you can't continuously overload the input or do anything that would otherwise compromise a good quality signal. One of my favorites are these phone units. We have a single and a 2-channel unit. I've always liked red phones for some strange reason, but these are kind of unique in that they themselves are an intercom system. It could be as simple as 2 of these units, one on stage and one out in the house, or one in a truck and one inside of a studio or something like that. So they act just as simply as being able to pick up one phone and calling another destination, and vice versa. So picking up and pushing the talk button allows you to communicate that way. Obviously, it's got a built-in mic amp with compressor and phantom power, volume control for the earpiece separately, and it is, of course, PoE powered. So no other connections are required. And we can obviously adjust and play around with the incoming gain and the actual ring level as well. So, and then on the other side of things, on the just belt pack side, we have our B1 and B2 single and dual channel packs, and then we also have a B4 channel and a B4 Plus that has a slight different combination of features. So the B2, the B1 and the B2, very similar, just a variation of 1 or 2 channels. So the whole party line mode that we talked about a minute ago is kind of centralized on those guys. So with something like that, I could take 2 of these units, literally tie them together with a small PoE switch, and I could have a small party line. Obviously, we've got volume control and pan function on the headsets. One of the things that's kind of nice is the unit works with a variety of different styles of headsets, pretty much with anything from 32 ohms right upward. So Glensound has built an impedance matching headphone amp, so you can plug in anything from in-ears basically right up to a set of high impedance cans, and you'll get the same relative acoustic output regardless. We can get it with a variety of different XLR connectors. Obviously, 4 or 5 pin is our common and our go-to, but it can be done differently. Obviously, those push-to-talk buttons are latching as well on the front. I've got one of the B2s here on the desk with me, and we can double tap any one of those talk buttons to initiate the call signal. And like everything else, it's PoE powered. So the B4 is very much the same. it has push-in level control and things like that. This guy has the option of doing a separate mic input and headset output. So you'll notice that we have an input on an XLR, which could be a combo jack or 4 or 5 pin like we're used to. But we also have a separate headphone jack here too. So we could just use a regular pair of headphones and a separate desktop microphone or something along those lines if you did want to. And like most, the talk keys can be momentary latching or kind of intelligent that way, where they sense how long the button's been pressed and act either as momentary or latching based on that. And we can engage call function for each of those 4 channels. So for the larger units, kind of as a desktop throwdown unit, we have the D4, the D8, the D8 Plus, and we actually have a full 16 channel unit as well, the D16. So these guys are very much the same as the belt packs, obviously with the built-in speaker and a mic input on top. Again, we have the whole headphone driving output circuitry built in that matches the impedance. But in this case, obviously an external mic input with that compressor built in. And these guys can be plugged in or they can be PoE powered as well. So this is the 8-channel version, very much the same. It does use as you'll notice, there's a few more jacks on the back of these, the D8 here and the D16. So these use the Brooklyn card, so they have a primary and secondary audio connection that way. So you'll see in a second that the D8 and the 16 units and the rack mount variant of those guys are a little bit more powerful. So these particular, you'll notice there's quite a bit more connections on the back of these units. And because we're using this different Dante chip, we have access to 32 different channels of the Dante network on this unit. So we're not obviously using them for the unit specifically, but we have the ability to do some mixing within these larger stations to complement another intercom system or to give feeds and mixes separately. We'll talk about that in a minute. One very neat box that's been a problem solver for us is something called the Virgil. And this is a little 2-channel Dante powered headphone, or in some cases it could be an IFB receiver, an amplifier for that. So basically it will accept 2 channels from the Dante network. It routes the first one to the left and the second to the right ear. And it includes a 1/4 inch or 3.5 mil jack, as you can see right in the front here. It's a little dark, but the 2 jacks are right there. And again, it has the same impedance matching system that I mentioned a few minutes ago, where we can run anywhere from 32 ohm right up to 1,000 ohm headsets and get the effectively the same output level, more or less. So this is a nice box. We've used this with some of our Clang in-ear monitoring systems, or just as a desktop listen to different sources or things like that. So. And we also have, obviously, rack mount versions of those various stations. So there's an R8, an R4, 8, and an R16 as well. And like those units, they do have the additional mixing capability on the backside to handle much larger, more comprehensive systems. So as I mentioned, with the whole party line mode, in simple terms, we could have a fairly straightforward intercom system where it's just 2 belt packs. These are 2 of the B2 belt packs. We have my trusty Cisco switch here. These are PoE powered belt packs. So in this particular case, we've got a channel for each, and we can do a full talk and listen between these users. We could, of course, add one of our nice little Divine loudspeakers into the mix as well. That could be used as a backstage page or announcement speaker, something along those lines. We could tie one of our AOIP units in, and this could tie into maybe a legacy building system, basically just bridging us from the Dante signals into analog as well to feed a legacy system. And then we can of course add any number of larger systems like a rack mount or our desktop stations that way. So, but once we get more than just a couple of points in the network, that's where we get into the need for something that we call a Dante Mixer, or the ability to at least mix the channels, because Dante is functionally a point-to-point system. So typically, it's just a more or less a router or a splitter. We need at some point a way to take in multiple input signals from, say, different belt packs, put them into a party line, and then send them off to other locations. So using some of the larger units like the D8 or the R8 unit, we can take advantage of those additional audio channels that are built into these units to facilitate the mixing of multiple bell packs and creating party lines, that say the LX has got its own party line and the stage management has its own, but can talk to, different groups there. So, so that's a whole other thing, but that's also a place where something like our Beatrice Mixer comes in handy. So this is just a standard, 32 by 32 mixer, and we have different configurations that we can run it in to configure these particular units. So to facilitate different groupings and what channels go to what does get mixed together, and so forth. So as I mentioned, those units, the 8 and the 16 channel units, as well as the Beatrice 32, they have the ability to accept and to transmit 32 discrete channels, or in this case mixes, onto the Dante network. So depending on which channels we decide to receive and to send to different areas or different devices will determine what mix that device is part of. So we can adjust the listen and the talk paths directly using the Dante controller software to specific channels in these units, and they'll get handled and mixed together separately. So as I say, when you open the D8 or the R8 in the Dante controller, you'll see 32 discrete inputs and 32 discrete outputs. So this is kind of a topic that I'm not going to cover a lot of today. Along with the commentary units, is something we'll probably do in a secondary session, just on the intercom stuff specifically, because it's very nice. You can build a very, very simple, but also very comprehensive intercom system using this, and just a switch infrastructure like this. So this is a quick example of some of the routing and things like that, and how those 32 channels break up. Again, I'm not going to go into great detail here, but for a D8, for example, just a quick analysis here is that in the top corner of the graph here, we have our receiver channels here and our transmitter channels, and these are specific point-to-point channels. These are the first 8 in, first 8 out of the D series or R series units that you can map. So you can point by point map those channels to specific Dante channels and send them into specific locations. So this is kind of the view as you would see it in Dante controller, or at least relating the channels to what we would see in Dante controller that way. So, but you'll notice down below we have some additional local inputs. So these are things that are on the back. So we can take local inputs from a panel and actually inject them into the Dante network on their own discrete channels. We also have the Dante auxiliary channels here that we can feed in. And then at the later half of each of these sections is what we call the mixer section. So these are pre-configured mixes, basically, where if this belt pack and this belt pack and this belt pack route to this input, this device will mix them together on those channels, and it will send it out a specific output. So we can use this function based on the way these cross points are pre-configured to create different party lines, different mixes, and things like that. So again, we're going to cover that a little bit in a different session altogether, but you get the idea that there's quite a few different configurations of mixes that can be done just in any of these units. And then we quickly looked at the standalone version, the Beatrice Mix 32. This basically gives us the same thing as the other units, but 32 of those instead. So we get basically eight units or 8 different mixers on the other units. This gives us quite a bit more. So we can basically take multiple input sources, create those mixes, and feed them off to different locations. So, and there's different combinations of mixes and channel counts in those mixes that you can select between from that. So. Anybody have any questions about that so far? I know it's kind of can be complicated, but as long as you get the idea. Great. Last thing I'm going to talk about, we're going to have a look at the software in a sec here on some of these devices in person, but I just wanted to quickly look at some of the commentary solutions. So I'm just looking at one of the basic ones, the Vita. We also have an Inferno here on the desk, one of the larger units to have a look at as well in person. So obviously, where Glensound came from, is highly rooted in commentary. So a lot of the products and a lot of the solutions that they've come up with have been based around that as a fundamental start. So one of the basic units that we run across quite often is the Vita unit, and this is basically very similar to just an intercom style of belt pack, but it's basically a Dante commentary talkback unit. So it's got a couple of extra channels and a different orientation for things, but it basically gives you the same capabilities. So we have a mic and line input phantom power with selectable gain that we can adjust. Same kind of mic pre and headphone amp that we have in all the other products. Obviously, we play around with that for different styles of inputs. But this box is specifically 2 inputs, so you'll notice we have Q input and the IFB input with separate level controls, plus the local mic. So these can be routed to each ear and adjusted independently that way. But it's basically a complete commentary unit and a third of a rack space, which is kind of nice. So same idea with this, and we can do remote control of this unit using the Vita software. So Glensound has a few different modules that can be used to control these units individually or multiple units at the same time. So they have a Vita controller for this guy separately. And I wanted to show quickly one of the system examples of kind of using a combination of this, and one of those examples is with our esports division here, and this is an area where the whole Dante networking side and the commentary units actually works quite well. So this is something that I've personally designed a few different systems, not this one specifically, but a few different systems around the idea of esports, and it's coming up to be quite common, and they're repeating themselves now. So obviously it's typically a couple of different teams are playing together. Each of those has a few players, and we need the ability to grab audio from each of those teams, feed them into a common area, but also have the ability for coaches to listen in and talk and advise the team, and referees as well too. So our judges in this particular case. So we're taking advantage of some of the unique features of Dante, and in the case of each of the teams, using Dante virtual sound card as a sound device for Dante, feeding the team audio into the Dante network. We're also providing each of the team members with a B4 unit for talkback and for multiple channels of monitoring. So all of that feeds into a standard PoE switch, and each of the coaches gets one of the B4 belt packs as well, and the judge itself gets one of the slightly larger D4 units, and I did basically just a desktop version of that. And then we're using the Beatrice 32 to do the mixing and to create the different groups between the units. So, but the nice thing is it's all 100% network based, and just fulfilled with a couple of Cat5 cables in each of these locations. I've done a few designs doing this in the analog world, and it gets messy very quickly doing trying to get inputs from computers into devices and have that be mixed in separately while still having enough channels for each of the different teams and coaches and judges and refs and things like that. So that's kind of this is kind of a nice and very simple and straightforward way to do that. So I'm going to take you through a couple of other things here. I just wanted to show quickly what some of these devices look like. So we are using Dante controller here to interface these. So some of the devices have their own control softwares and protocols, but fundamentally all the routing is done with Dante controller. So I have a few different devices here on the desktop. I first have my Divine here, which is represented by this guy right here. I have my MacBook Pro here, which is this is my laptop here. I'm running a Dante virtual sound card on it, so I'm injecting 2 channels of audio into the Dante network from here. Some music playback, just to listen. I also have an AOI P22, this guy right here. I have a Beatrice B2, which is my 2-channel Dante belt pack. And then I have this Inferno unit here plugged in. I do have another unit, but this guy isn't powered up. So you'll notice that depending on which units we have a varying assignment of channel counts. So the AOI P22 is our 2x2 unit here. The Beatrice again is the same kind of 2x2, and the Inferno actually has this is basically an 8-channel unit altogether. So this is one of the larger commentary boxes. So it has 8 different talkback designations with level control. So you can see we have 8 inputs and 8 outputs dedicated to that unit. So fundamentally, I've got just as an interesting way, the Divine, as we mentioned, is a 4-channel Dante device. So we can designate up to 4 different channels to go to this, and then we can select between them using the select buttons on the front if we want to, and as well as setting the program override and ducking and things like that. So in my case here, you'll see that I've got my laptop fed with 1 channel over to the Divine here, and if I've got some audio queued up here, and I don't know if you can hear that, but I have some Rush playing in the background. So, but it's as simple as that to make that audio flow. I basically just made 1 cross point between the MacBook and the first channel of the Divine, and we're good to go. So for some of the larger and more complicated stuff, we do have the Glensound controller app. So the only device compatible at the moment that I've got plugged in is this Divine that we were looking at. So we can see that with this particular unit up, we have the ability to select and toggle between the channels here. We can see metering on all of the channels. We've got our volume control, which corresponds to the volume control on the front of the unit as well, so that can be remotely controlled, which is really handy. And we also have the output selection here as well. So we have these pairs of combos that represent that. Even got a temperature control, which is kind of neat. So we have an audio settings configuration where we can check and see where the clock source is and what's coming in with it. Our speaker setup here, this is where we would set our priority. So we can select that channel and have that go. So you can set up basically a 4-level priority on this. So this channel, then that channel, then that channel, and so forth, which is really nice. And you can select the dim amount here as well. So how much does it duck, all of that. And then like we can adjust on the back, we have a metering section here. We can do coloring meters, change passwords, brightness, turn off all of that. We can do low frequency cuts, flip the polarity of the unit, and do some grouping of them as well too, if you have a large quantity of these units to play around with. So yeah, you can. That's most of the control software is just as simple as that. We have the ability for when the devices are powered up to go out over the network and to find those. This does basically an MDNS multicast out to the network to see what other devices are on there. But you can statically assign them and do things like that within the unit as well. So very straightforward. There's not too much to the software. It's more of just a quick way to get at some of the features that we can get at in the back of the unit, or in most cases administering multiple units at the same time. So it makes that job much easier. So just as I mentioned earlier, we've got a kind of a selection of things. One thing I didn't cover off that ties into commentary units is something I call this is the mini cub, and this is a bit of a sidebar. It doesn't really fit into the standard categories, but this guy is actually I'll switch to the close-up here. This is basically it's a USB audio device, essentially. So we have a USB connection here, powered by the line itself. We can feed a mic in here. We've got a headphone jack here, and this gives us gain and input level for that. So this was a unique project that they developed and designed for the Swedish radio, Swedish broadcast, and it was one of those very high quality. It needed to be bus powered, and could only be that way, and needed to be a certain size and certain configuration. So this kind of stuck, and it's a very nice, very clean mic pre as well. It has that impedance matching output configuration. So regardless of what headphones that you're wearing with this, you've got that covered. So kind of a neat box, but it's kind of in a class of its own altogether. But for the other guys, I've got our 2-channel V2 bell pack, just PoE powered here into the switch. I do have this is one of the media units, so this is actually more commentary section here. So the same idea, almost the same kind of configuration. And yeah, that's one of the nice options. Sorry, I'm just going to make a quick.
Probably hear me a little better now, eh? So sorry. And this obviously is our AOI P22 box that we talked about. So little Dante powered in. I'm just using a Cisco SG350. It's about a $450 switch. But I've found that this particular model with things like Dante and AS67, the timing and the switching of the switch itself functions very well. Even without any QoS settings, the timing and the latency through the switch is quite good. And I've tested a number of switches for these kind of products, and they're all different. Even some of the more expensive Cisco switches don't have the same switching performance as these guys do as well. So this particular model is a very recent one. So it pays certain attention to the PTP timing that's used for Dante and the forwarding of packets that's required to make this stuff work quite well. So.